Hello, everybody, and welcome to Recurrent with Todd Evans. We have a special guest today, Bicyclelegs from Bicyclelegs Talks Music, and we are going to rank something Neal Morse related. Imagine that. We are going to rank the studio albums of Transatlantic. So there's only five of them. Should take a little bit less time than it took when we did the Neal Morse solo albums. So there is Sempty, which is from 2000, Bridge Cross Forever from 2001. Isn't it crazy that we got these two albums so close to each other?
Yeah,
I remember
absolutely.
thinking at the time, we don't deserve this. Uh, The Whirlwind from 2009, Kaleidoscope from 2014, and The Absolute Universe from 2021. So, for me, I don't know about you, Bicycle Legs, but there is pretty much no space between any of these. So,
Yeah, it was a really tough ask to get these in some semblance of an order, but hopefully I'll explain myself as we go along as to why I put them in the order that I did. But yeah, I love all of these albums, and re-listening to them for preparing for this show was just an absolute delight. So
yeah, and more about it when we get to it. But I really wanted to there was some certain things that I wanted to do, but I couldn't do. But we'll talk about that when we get to it. What did you choose for your number five?
all right. My number five, I went with the fourth album from 2014, which is Kaleidoscope. Um, and again, you know, tiny, tiny margins on this. I just feel like the epics on this album, they're really, really good, but I don't think they quite come up to maybe the stunning quality of the some of those sort of 20, 30 minute epics on those first two albums. And but they're still really, really good. Um, I always thought it was weird that they picked Shine as the single off this album, though,
Yeah,
because
me
it
too.
it really doesn't sound very transatlantic-y.
Yeah,
It sounds more like something that you would get on one of Neal Morse's sort of singer-songwriter albums or something
yeah,
like that,
yeah.
which you know, odd choice. But there's still some really great moments in Into the Blue. Black as the Sky is a short song, but it's, got all the bells and whistles, all the transatlantic bells and whistles, which I think is wonderful. Um, Beyond the Sun is that sort of, Neil Morse solo write that you would get on a lot of these albums. He would have like one song that was just a Neil Morse song. And the title track Kaleidoscope, yeah, I mean, it is a really good epic. It, bare margins as to why this ended up being my fifth. But yeah, Kaleidoscope's a really, really good album. And I remember really liking it when it first came out, and I still love it a lot. But something has to be at the bottom, and unfortunately for me, it's Kaleidoscope.
Yeah, the title epic from Kaleidoscope, I've always thought I'll talk about more about this later, but I've always felt like one of the things that's kind of refreshing about it is that it doesn't follow the Neil Morse style of
Hmm.
the construction of the epic, which was good because there had by that point there had been so many of these that it was good to get one where I feel like maybe somebody else wrote the main theme or the last part, and so I always thought that was kind of interesting, but more on that later. So my number five is Sempty, Stolt, Morse, Portnoy, Trewavas. And this is kind of how I determined my order, is that I kind of think that each one of these albums has a flaw on it. Like there's something about I can point to a track or maybe two tracks where I think, okay, that could have been left off, or this one is kind of dull or something like that. There's always something about these albums that I think that of. Uh, all of the above. First of all, I should say that when this came out, um, came out in 2000. I was in the process of moving from California back to Georgia, where I was from. And I listened to this and Spock's Beard 5 or V just over and over on the trip. And I was obsessed with this. So the fact that I would pick it as my number five would, it kind of tells you about how much space that is between these albums, and pretty much none. All of the above, fantastic, fantastic, epic. The first two or three epics that Transatlantic did, they kind of started out with this really kind of dazzling Neal Morse synth flourish, and it became to where, and this one does that too, all of the above, and it became to where I started expecting that, and then eventually I started going, okay, well. They don't have to do that at the beginning of every single one of these epics. And in later albums, they took that thing that I'm talking about and the really kind of dazzling synth thing, and they put it in different places in the albums. But I've always loved all of the above, and we all need some light, of course, is a classic. Mystery Train and My New World are pretty good. I'll talk later on about some of the other albums where sometimes I think the songs that are sandwiched between the epics are kind of, some are better than others, but I think these two are really good. I think the flaw in this one, and this is really probably a controversial thing to say, but in Held 'Twas an I mean, there were a lot of it took me a really long time to get into this song. I wasn't familiar with it when the album came out, and I really wasn't familiar with it really for quite a few years after that. I never did a deep dive into Procol Harum, so I didn't really know what it was. I mean, obviously, it's something that means a lot to these guys, and it's probably the first prog suite. I mean, it's from 1968, and but I feel like the structure of it, I mean, it's amazing for what it is because it's probably the first, I mean, this thing that Neal Morse loves to do by taking a bunch of different songs and combining them into a prog suite. This was in Hell 'Twas and I was probably the first one, and it's amazing that it's as good as it is and it holds together as well as it does. But not being familiar with it, I thought it was really disjointed when I heard it. I had a hard time getting
Mm.
into it. I feel like it has a couple of false endings towards the end where you think it's done and then it kind of does something where if you're not familiar with the song, you're like, oh, I don't know if that's such a great transition. I always thought it was a little bit awkward. Um, as the years go by, I like it more and more. And when I did the deep dive into these albums in the past week, I really enjoyed it. But it also made me remember what I didn't like about it when the album came out. So that's my number five, the first one.
Yeah. All right. My number four is going to be the last one, The Absolute Universe. I've got the big box set here. It's got
Yep.
CDs. It's got both versions of the album on vinyl. So there's like five slabs of vinyl in there. And I've got to say, you know, it's hard to choose between whether you want the abridged version or the extended version. I tend to go for the extended version. Um, Although my absolute preference, having this giant box set, is to listen to the ultimate version, which is the 5.1 surround mix, and it's just stunning in surround sound. So definitely try and find a copy of that if you can. This is of all these vinyl sets that I've got, this is probably the easiest one to find because it's the most recent.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's one of these ones where it's like a bunch of songs, but it's one gigantic suite, much like the Whirlwind is. And I think it's interesting that they did two versions of it because I've always felt that there was a little bit, as much as these guys obviously love each other and love playing with each other and all that sort of thing. I always feel there's a little bit of creative tension between Neal and Roine. Um, and I think that's one of the things that makes this band interesting. I mean, you look at the first album that you were showing off there. There is actually a version of that with a different mix that was done by Roine that you can get on CD. And so obviously Roine wanted that album to sound different than the rest of the guys did. And similarly, Roine wanted the long version of this, and Neal wanted the shorter version. So I think that's interesting too. But and correct me if I'm wrong, because you would have seen them play this at Morsefest in 2022.
Correct.
Um, yeah. They did the long version, didn't they, when they
Yes.
played it live? Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't know, maybe Neal had come around to it. I don't know. But I think it's absolutely stunning. There are a couple of little bits where maybe it drags because I mean we're talking about for the Forevermore version, the extended version, we're talking about a piece that is over an hour and a half long. So there's going to be bits that maybe don't quite hold your attention as much as some others, but the highlights are just incredible. And you even get, and I think this is the only time you really get this on a Transatlantic album. You get one of Neal Morse's little Gentle Giant inspired bits. And I'm a sucker for those. So, but this is a stunning album. Again, the fact that I've got it at number four, don't let that fool you. This is an incredible piece of music. And, it's really hard to sort of pick bits, even though there's sort of like 18, 19 bits if you're looking at the extended version. Um, it really does. Well, the extended version feels like two songs because it is on two CDs.
Yeah.
So there is a pretty, there's it's kind of like Tubular Bells or Thick as a Brick. It does feel, even though it's one piece, it kind of feels like two. But whereas the abridged version, The Breath of Life, really does play like one extended piece because it's on one disc. So yeah, I mean it's a really, really good album, and you get all those wonderful bells and whistles. And what I love about these later um Transatlantic albums is you're getting vocals from all four guys,
Yeah.
which on those first two albums you didn't really get. You really got mostly Neal with a little bit of Roine. And with these, you're getting it's still Neal is predominant, but you're getting Roine singing, you're getting Pete singing, and you're getting Mike singing. And I'm all for that. So, that's one of the great things with these more later Transatlantic albums. I feel like as this band went on, they became more of a band and they developed more of their own identity as opposed to, as much as I love those first two albums, and you'll see that from my ranking where I've put them, they do feel a little bit like, okay, here's a Neal song, here's a Roine song, you know. Whereas these later ones really do feel like a collaborative, everybody's throwing a bit into the stew kind of effort. And that does give them a different character, and I do love that about them. So yeah, that's my number four is the Absolute Universe.
Okay. Well, that is also my number four, but I prefer the Breath of Life version.
Yeah,
I
fair
think the
enough.
other version's a little bit too long. And here's where I'm going to say something kind of controversial. I do not mean to say anything bad about Roine Stolt. I think he's a fantastic artist. I do not think that he knows how to edit. And I think that there are quite a few albums by his band, the Flower Kings, that illustrate this. I don't think he's a good editor. I don't think that he's a good sequencer. So when I found out that there were going to be two versions and that Neal was going to be doing the shorter one and Ronnie was going to be doing the long one, I was disappointed because I want the Neal version to be the definitive version. So in my brain, it is. Um, Most people don't say that. In my experience with people that I've talked to, they like the long version because it's the long version. It's longer. Why would you pick the shorter one? But I think that it flows better. I think that the setup to Love Made Away, the finale, is much more logical and emotional on the short version than it is on the longer version. And I think that that's Neal because he knows how to do that. That's just my opinion. I don't think there is anything wrong with this album as far as I don't want to give the impression that the band was slipping or anything like that. There's nothing wrong with it composition wise, as far as like the main themes. And I love that, like you said, that you can hear everybody singing. The flaw in this album, I think, is Belong. And not to make it sound like I'm picking too much on Roine, I know that that's his idea. This whole Better to Belong thing was something that he brought to the table and really wanted to be in this project. But I don't care for it. It took me a while to figure out what they were even saying. And I don't like whatever is happening at the beginning of that track with something chanting or the children or whatever it's supposed to be. I don't like it at all. So on that alone, it kind of dropped this a notch. So I think it's abrupt and odd, and I don't think it works. And I find myself skipping from 9 to 11. And so that's harsh, I know, but I really just don't like that song. I think it's strange and awkward and off-putting. But this is a great album. This is probably a 9.5 out of 10 album, and I do love it. So that's my number four.
Yeah, before I get on to my number three, the one thing I wanted to point out too is I think it's really interesting that the two albums of theirs that basically work as one giant long piece
Hmm.
both talk about whirlwinds.
Yeah.
Because this one, when I was hearing it, when I was re-listening to it, I was listening to the lyrics and I was like, whirlwinds again. It's just interesting that,
Well, they
that's a
even say
recurring
it.
theme
They
with
even
this
say the
band.
word.
Yes. So,
Yeah, my brain splits
all
it into
right.
tracks. We talked about that on the Neal
Yeah.
Morse show. My brain splits it into tracks. So I think of it
Yeah.
as a 14 track album.
Yeah. My number three, my top three, I mean, they're all 10 out of 10 albums. They really
Yeah,
are. And putting them in some kind of order was somewhat arbitrary, but I think I do have a little bit of a justification for it anyway. My number three, Bridge Across Forever from 2001. Um, what can you say about this album? I mean, Duel with the Devil, great, great, epic. Sweet Charlotte Pike is their kind of homage to the Beatles and to the Abbey Road suite and all that sort of thing. To the point where when I saw them live, I saw them on the Whirlwind tour in Tilburg, Netherlands. And during that show, when they did Sweet Charlotte Pike, they actually interspersed bits of the Abbey Road suite with the bits of Sweet Charlotte Pike, which, was just perfect. Bridge Across Forever. I've said to people before that I want that song played at my funeral, because it just really is that kind of song. It's absolutely gorgeous, and it's that Neal Morse solo. Although he wrote it with somebody whose name escapes me at the moment, but um, it's a beautiful. It's the only short song on the album, and it's haunting. It's lovely. And then Stranger in Your Soul. I think a lot of people would consider Stranger in Your Soul to be Transatlantic's best epic. I don't. There's one I like better, but Stranger in Your Soul is undeniably brilliant. And it probably isn't a transatlantic show without them playing it.
right.
So, um, you know, incredible album. And then, what I love about these ones, the bonus LPs, you get them doing cover versions. And, they do some great cover versions on this, like Shine On You Crazy Diamond and Smoke on the Water. And yeah. Um, and these are well worth seeking out if you can find them, but they go for about $400 these days, these editions with the extra disc. And this one's on uh, purple vinyl, and no, this one's on blue vinyl, I think. The first one's on purple. But yeah, terrific, terrific album. And as I say, we're talking millimeters as in the distance between these
Right,
albums. So,
right. Well, my number three is Kaleidoscope. And here's the special box for that one. And the great thing about Kaleidoscope is that it takes the covers album and puts it on its own LP with its own cover and
mm,
feels like its own thing, which is kind of nice. I mean, on the CD also, it's a bonus CD, so it's separated
yeah.
there too. But this feels like a real thing, like uh like maybe it should have been available separately for those that wanted it. So the way I feel about Kaleidoscope is this. When I've gone to a bunch of Morse fests, and sorry about that noise there, I knocked something over. I've been to a bunch of Morse fests and almost all of them. And there's a lot of talk. People talk, when you're waiting in line and at the concession stand and at the hotel and stuff like that. And there are a lot of people who think that Kaleidoscope is straight up the worst one. And that has been going on since basically it came out. It's been going on since 2014. That's a very common opinion for a lot of the people that I know in the fan community. And I think that's a wrong opinion. And I think not that putting it last is a wrong opinion if you were going to rank them, but considering it being not a good album, I think is really
Mm,
unfortunate. Um, I think that Into the Blue is every bit as good as the best of the epics. I think that I think that the main theme of that is absolutely gorgeous, and I think that the arrangement is amazing. I love the very end where Neal sings over it, "Spirit comes down." I think that's so beautiful. Uh, I just love Into the Blue, and I think it's great. And I don't think that there is much that's better than it. Um, and when people say, "Oh, this is not their good album," or they go so far as to say, "Oh, this is a bad album or a terrible album," I just don't have any patience for that. But and I'd already talked before when you mentioned this album that I think Kaleidoscope is a really interesting. This album is bookended with an epic at the beginning and an epic at the end, and I think Kaleidoscope is really interesting because, like I said, many of these epics feel like Neil's driving it. They feel very similar to Neil's epics in Neal Morse band or on his solo albums. But this one, Kaleidoscope, feels different. Kaleidoscope has a different kind of a main theme, and I don't think it's Neil's. And I think that the structure of it is different. And that was kind of refreshing because, they could do, I feel like Into the Blue is rock solid into the Neal Morse zone. And I feel like Kaleidoscope is the track is a little bit different. And I liked that because at the time, you know, there were two on here. There was one that was what you expected, and there was one that was different. So I thought that was good. I was like, okay, they're not going to pigeonhole themselves into this box where they do these epics and they're between 25 minutes and 30 minutes long, and they have similar structures. This one's different. I think that the flaw in this album is that I think it sort of really in two places it sort of runs out of steam. I think Black as the Sky as a short track is very, very, very good. I think Shine is very good, but like you said, I feel like maybe it's not so much a Transatlantic song as it is a Neal Morse song. And I think Beyond the Sun is just a little bit it's good. I just don't think it's up to the level of the two epics and Black as the Sky. So that's kind of why I put it third and not higher. But as far as Into the Blue goes, I think that that's top tier uh,
yeah,
transatlantic. So justice for Kaleidoscope.
yeah. Well, as I said, I still, I'd probably still give that a 9 out of 10, that
Yeah.
album. But something had to be fifth,
Yeah.
and it just happened to be that. And I agree with you. I remember people, sort of slagging that album when it first came out and saying, it's no good, and, you know, all that sort of thing. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I think it's a fine album. My number two is going to be the debut.
Okay.
SMPT. I always just called it SMPTE. I never tried to pronounce it because, yeah. This was my introduction to the band. I came to them a little later though, because I first discovered Neal and Spock's Beard around about the time that he left Transatlantic and Spock's Beard. So, we're talking about probably 2002. So, and I sort of discovered, and Transatlantic are really important to me because like I came at them through Neal, and I came Neal through Spock's Beard, and by discovering Transatlantic, I was like, oh, Pete Trewavas is in this band. I haven't listened to any Marillion in ages. I need to catch up on them. And then I was like, oh, who's this Mike Portnoy guy? And who's this Roine Stolt guy? So then that led me down the rabbit hole of discovering Dream Theater
Yeah.
and the Flower Kings. And I love both of those bands too. Although, funnily enough, with Dream Theater, it took me a couple of albums because I was looking for their albums sort of secondhand and cheap because I didn't know whether I was going to like them or not. The first album of theirs I found was Awake, and I didn't quite connect with that album. And then I found Images and Words, and that was the one that sold me on Dream Theater.
Yeah, I was
Um,
lucky that Images and Words, when I discovered them, that was the only one that was out because when Dream and Day Unite was not available, it was out of print. And
yeah,
so Images and Words was all there was. So I was lucky that I was able to discover them in an album that's really easy to get into. But yeah.
yeah. But I mean, this is just a phenomenal album. Although, as I said, this definitely does, even in the writing credits, like All of the Above is credited to Neal Morse with Pete Trewavas, Roine Stolt, and Mike Portnoy. So you can tell that he was the main driver of it. But All of the Above is my favorite transatlantic epic. Always has been and probably always will be. I just think it's a stunning, stunning piece of work. Um, we all need some light. I mean, just a beautiful song. Another song that they pretty much have to play every time that they do it. And I think that definitely, I think we all need some light is pointing to where Neal was going to go in his solo career to a certain extent, because
Yeah.
it feels like even though it's not explicitly religious, it definitely has that sort of you could hear people singing it in a church, you know. It kind of has that feel to it. And but it's a beautiful song. And on the bonus LP of this one, you get an alternate version of it with Roiner singing it. And I don't necessarily like that better, but I do like it. I think it's interesting to hear Roiner sing. I'm one of these guys with the Flower Kings. I want to hear Roiner sing.
Oh, me
As
too.
much as I
Me
like
too.
and I love My New World, and that is a very Flower Kingsy kind of song. And but it's really, really cool. Um, Mystery Train might be the little thing that I think it's a good song, and it's definitely got that sort of Neal Morse. It's very Spock's beardy, early
It's,
Spock's beard. Like,
yeah. I always thought it could have been on five too. Yeah.
yeah, I actually think it actually to me sounds like even a little earlier than that. I could hear it on
Yeah, I can
like
hear that.
Beware of Darkness or something like that.
Yeah.
But and I've always loved the In Held 'Twas in I. Um, that made me go down the Procol Harum rabbit hole. I mean, I knew Procol Harum, obviously, everybody knows White Shade of Pale.
Right.
I mean, that's just like a staple of classic rock radio. But I didn't really know much of their stuff beyond that. And I still don't own all the Procol Harum albums, but I've got a few of them and they're really, really good. And Yeah, it's a really, really good album. And for a long time, this was my favorite Transatlantic album, but it's still my number two. So, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, I still think this is a terrific album. And as I say, my top three are all 10 out of 10. So, yeah, it's hard to fault that album.
And you're very lucky to have that version of it
Mm.
because I have never been able to find one.
I bought it when it came out,
Yeah,
that and Bridge
that would have
Across
been the
Forever
way.
and Whirlwind.
And it's funny, we were talking about this the Kaleidoscope being not as maybe as well thought of as the others. Kaleidoscope was available on the merch table at Morsefest for 2 or 3 years in a row, and I finally decided I was like,
Oh,
that's going to be gone. I better buy that. But
yeah.
Cynthia and Bridge Across Forever, absolutely not.
Mm.
They were long gone. Well, my number two is Bridge Across Forever, and I have to tell you, oh, hey, Kitty.
Mhm.
I have to tell you that it hurts my heart to put this at number two. I really
Yeah.
wanted to put it at number one, but I needed something to differentiate the order I was going to put these in. And the one that I picked as my number one, doesn't have any flaws. So so that's why I went with this one at number two, even though I think Duel with the Devil and Stranger in Your Soul, especially Stranger in Your Soul, I think are the best of their epics. I think Stranger in Your Soul might be Neal Morse's best work, even though I know that he didn't do the whole thing. Um, I think I tend to think of a lot of people think of Neal Morse as some people think of him as a singer-songwriter predominantly. Some people think of him as a guitarist as much as a keyboardist, but I think of him as a keyboardist because he was,
Mm.
I got to know him through Spock's Beard and then Transatlantic. So I think of him as a keyboardist. And his synth sounds are just so great. And Duel with the Devil, that da 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 da, that sound that he's using there just blows my mind. I just absolutely love it. It's so spooky and wonderful. I just think it's great. Um, Sweet Charlotte Pike is kind of fun. I think Bridge Across Forever is where this album kind of runs out of steam. I think that it's just a little bit too sparse and a little bit too quiet. Uh, Quiet's a bad word to use, but I feel like it needs more to the arrangement. It's not that the song isn't gorgeous, it absolutely is, but I think that there needs to be more there. And you've got Duel with the Devil, which of course is an epic and it's epic, and then you've got Sweet Charlotte Pike, which is kind of fun, and then Bridget Frost Forever to me kind of feels like it just sits there, and then you get Stranger in Your Soul. So that's why I put this not first and
Yeah.
second. And but I have to say, Stranger in Your Soul, I have seen the Neal Morse band play Stranger in Your Soul. I think twice, which is which is awesome. It's a lot of fun to see that because then you get to experience it in a little bit of a different way. That's what they did as the encore in on the first Morse Fest 2014, and so it's always had a special place. I use it very often to test out my stereo. I've said that in a couple of different shows, but those cymbal pings in "Stranger in Your Soul" right before the drums kick in, the first it's like 4 or 5 minutes in, is something that I always love, and it's really funny to use that as to see how a system sounds when it sounds good no matter on what system you play it in. It sounds good on a boombox. So it's kind of like using Steely Dan for that. It sounds good no
Mm.
matter what you play it on. So what are you actually trying to prove? But yeah, this is my number two. If I had to say what my favorite one is, it's this one.
Yeah.
There you go.
I think we've got the same number one, Todd. The Whirlwind from 2009. Now, funnily enough, when this album first came out, I actually didn't think it was as good as the first two.
Wow. That's exactly what I'm going to
Um,
say.
yeah, I
Yeah.
just didn't. Um, and it took for me seeing it live and seeing them play the entire thing from beginning to end. Um, 80 minutes, pretty much non-stop. I think with about 10 minutes to go, there's a pause where everybody kind of got up on their feet and cheered loudly, and they actually kind of acknowledged the crowd for a bit and before they went on and finished the song. But I mean, wow, it just took my breath away live. And then after that, it just became my favorite Transatlantic album. And one of the first things though, when I first listened to this, you talk about them trying to do things a little bit differently. Um, when you get the overture, or like obviously pretty much every Transatlantic or Neal Morse epic has an overture. Um, you get that, but then you get the first song, the Whirlwind, and the first voice you hear is Roine. And I think that's pretty much on any of these epics. That's the only time that happens.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, um, every other one it's Neal starting the song. And then this one it's Roine, and I thought, wow, you know. Um, but yeah, it this one really does play like one piece though. You know, this one doesn't feel like songs maybe the way that the Absolute Universe does. This really does feel like an 80-minute song. And there isn't a wasted moment on it. There just isn't. The wind blew them all away on the prowl. The rose-colored glasses bit, that one always kind of tugs at my heartstrings. Um, and the Is It Really Happening section, my goodness, that sends shivers down my spine these days. It really, really does. Um, I remember thinking that as I was going in, because I traveled all the way to the Netherlands. I didn't specifically travel to see Transatlantic. I'm not quite that crazy a fan. Um, Although I got to meet them after the show, everyone except Royner. I got to meet them, and when I told Pete Trewavas that I'd flown in from Australia for the gig, he kind of jokingly said to me, "Oh, you must be a bit of a nutter then." Um, which he many years later apologized to me for, which I thought was funny because I always thought it was a joke.
Yeah. Right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, but as I was going into the show, that's what I was thinking to myself, is this really happening? And I got to meet all these people that I'd become friends with on the Neal Morse message boards, all
Yeah.
these European fans. And
Yeah. I missed that.
it was wonderful. We went out. I didn't have to buy a Diet Coke all night because everybody wanted to buy one for me. Um, we went out and had kebab, and which was a little different in the Netherlands than it is here, but because it's like served on a plate rather than wrapped up. But
Yeah.
um, we went out, we had food, we all chatted together. It was one of the most magical nights of my life. Um, and it made this album come alive for me. And it's still, top two or three greatest concerts I've ever been to. So, um, and as I say, for an 80-minute piece, to not have a single wasted moment
Yeah.
is just an astounding accomplishment. And a couple of these little, like this one, the bonus LP, you actually get some extra transatlantic songs, which you really don't get with many of the other ones.
Yeah.
Um, and they're good too. I really like them too.
Hmm.
So,
I'm going to
Spinning
talk
and
about
Lenny
one of them.
Johnson. Yeah. So, and then their cover of The Return of the Giant Hogweed, they actually played that in Tilburg as a second encore. And it was the only show on that tour where they did that.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay.
um, we felt very special that
I'll
they did an
bet.
extra song just for us. So, yeah, my number one, The Whirlwind, and obviously it's your number one too.
Yeah, it is. My vinyl copy is a reissue, so it's just a
Yeah.
gatefold, but still very nice as a matter of
Yes.
fact. And I really didn't want to pick it. Everybody says it's their favorite. Everybody says it's the best one, but I had to be honest with myself. It's really pretty much perfect from beginning to end, even if maybe it's not my favorite melody wise. I don't, when I first heard it, I didn't like the main theme at all. I thought, da 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 da. I was like, really? That's the main theme on a Transatlantic album? I was just like, oh, I hope this gets better. And I had trouble with it when it first came out. It was like, God, 77:56, it's so long. I probably sat with it for a good 6 months before I kind of had a breakthrough with it. But obviously, there's lots of great themes on this. It just didn't make the best. The Overture and Whirlwind didn't make the best first impression on me, but obviously I warmed up to it. I think The Wind Blew Them All Away is great. I often play that as a standalone, and I do the same thing with Rose-Colored Glasses. Um, Something wrong with my brain takes these albums that are one big epic and splits them into tracks. But I tend to do that with this record, even though I do also think that it 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 also plays as a continuous 77-minute track, obviously, very well. But I can also separate a couple of them out. When the album first came out, I didn't like Is It Really Happening? I thought it was repetitive and I didn't like it. And when I finally figured out that last part of it with the dazzling synth thing that I was referring to earlier. When I figured out that that was part of Is It Really Happening, really, going into Dancing with Eternal Glory, I was just like, okay, I was completely wrong about is it really happening? And luckily, I only spent, I'd say 5 or 6 months not getting it, but I finally got it. So I don't know why I had a block with this one, but like you said, it really is pretty much perfect from start to finish. And the the cover art is my favorite. My favorite color is orange, so obviously I like it.
Mm.
And reference to the storm here. Neal brings up the storm many different times in all of his projects. He's always talking about the storm is what you experience before you get clarity and before before you things start to take shape and you start to understand what's going on. You have to go through the storm first. And my wife loves that concept, and she loves the Flying Colors song, The Storm. And her favorite Transatlantic song is We All Need Some Light, but she likes this album also. And I have to say something about For Such a Time. That was a song that one of the bonus songs. That was a song that I didn't pay any attention to for years. And one of my friends, actually one of Neal's friends who comes to Morsefest, Jeff Bailey, he was talking about they were being interviewed, and Jeff said that one of his favorite Transatlantic songs was For Such a Time. And if anybody hasn't heard that, it's tough because you can't. I don't think you can stream that. I don't think any of this bonus material is available to stream. So you would have to have the CD or the deluxe vinyl like you have. But it's its own uh, song, but it also has elements of the main theme of the Whirlwind in it. So it obviously, I think, at some point was part of the suite and it got separated it out. But as far as melodically, For Such a Time is my favorite song. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. And I do wonder if because of its religious content that maybe that's why they took it out because it's overtly Christian. But beautiful song, and if you can get your hands on the bonus disc, that's definitely worth having, along with the Return of the Giant Hogweed, which is actually my least favorite Genesis song, but it sure is a lot of fun hearing them play it. So, so yeah, I guess we both picked the Whirlwind, as do most
Yeah.
people. Um, but wow, that was fun. and also almost completely impossible to do. Uh,
Yeah.
well, thanks everybody for joining us for this. I hope there was I hope you enjoyed us trying to figure out how we were going to pick our favorites when really they're all favorites. Thanks to Bicycle Legs. Make sure that you're subscribed to Bicycle Legs Talks Music, which I don't think I know anybody who isn't, but just in case, get on that. And you will see Bicycle Legs again, I'm sure, on this channel, and you'll hopefully I'll be on his. So thanks everybody for
Yep.
joining us, and see you next time.